So I would like to ask this question. What is a human? Welcome to this episode of Kim Mogi's Street Brain Radio. Well, most people think they know what humans are. Humans are humans, aren't they? But this question is important because increasingly with the advent of the internet and other technologies, people are discussing the possibilities of transhumanism or posthumanism. And people are discussing the implications, if possible, of copying humans and the entire self in terms of mind uploading and whole brain emulation. But when you are talking about these things, and you tacitly assume that you know what humans are. But do we really know what humans are? Well, the answer might depend on whether you have read Dostoevsky or James Joyce or Nietzsche. Well, I'm just saying that probably if you know, or if you think you know humans, maybe you are naive. Excuse me for ravishing probably, roughly speaking, 28% of the listeners' death at the beginning of my talk. But I had to do that because I'm always troubled by these very naive people on the internet, which I know both privately and not so well. Anyway, so what are humans? Seriously. Yeah, we are officially Homo sapiens, right? So does intelligence define humanity? If so, the so-called artificial intelligence, well, arguably, we still don't know whether they are really intelligent or not. I'm on the doubting side, actually. But, it's quite impressive, isn't it? Large language models, stable diffusion, Bill Gates is not artificial intelligence. Correction. He's a human being. All these wonderful examples of modern technology. Are we telling us that at least we have understood what intelligence is? Well, I would like to reserve my answer until a day comes when Microsoft announces virtual Einstein or virtual Leonardo da Vinci. Well, probably not virtual Bill Gates, but anyway, I don't think that we have understood the gist of it, how we become intelligent beings and how we can create all these wonderful, marvelous achievements of humanities. I don't think we have understood that. And when you think about it, the history of the biological forms that led to Homo sapiens as we know it is quite long. The last year, Nobel Prize went to a researcher who studied the relationship between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals. And, even considering this small part of the really complex and rich branching of species, we should really, not think that what we know as human beings or Homo sapiens at present is not the whole picture. Of course, there have been many other species, and there have been and would be if we do not behave stupidly and force all biological forms on this earth to extinction. There would be generations and generations of branching out and branching in, and there would be more evolving biological forms, as Charles Darwin very movingly described in his magnum opus, The Origin of Species. So when we talk about humans, I think it's always short-sighted. Technologists who advocate the possibilities of whole brain emulation and brain uploading, yeah, you have guessed it right. From the way I talk about these words, I don't really care for these words. You have guessed it right. Yeah, I don't care for these words, actually. I think this idea of whole brain emulation, mind uploading is rubbish. But that's my own prejudice, so maybe we'll have plenty of time to correct that in this episode of Street Brain Radio. But anyway, So, in the long history of biological forms leading to Homo sapiens, and we should not be victims of the end of history illusion here. Of course, after us, not the deluge, not the flood, but history will be carried on. There will be many, many different life forms. Hopefully, fingers crossed. So, what do we mean by Homo sapiens? That's a genuinely legitimate question, and I don't think, even in terms of biology, we know quite well what humanity is actually involved. I mean, we kind of think we know what we are, but that's only very short-sighted. I mean, we are probably just talking about a few hundred years at most, sometime after the Renaissance, when we based our existence on logical thinking, rationality. Well, not many of us. I mean, actually, some people are quite free from the burden or curse of rationality, as you can see on the internet. But we are here because we have developed science and technology, and we are probably sending spacecrafts to Mars with Elon Musk and his fellows on it, and one-way ticket, or maybe a return ticket, and so we really very well doing. We're doing very well. We are building artificial intelligence systems, but if you look at the whole history of biological systems from the vantage point of some distance, so there is this genuine question: what are we doing here relative to the whole phase space, if you like, of biological evolution? And it's not entirely self-evident, I think. And so the way we understand what humans are at present might be totally irrelevant when it comes to understanding the gist of what life forms are. My really great friend, Takashi Ikegami, he's a professor of artificial intelligence and biology and physics and artificial life at the University of Tokyo. His Twitter account is at LLTBL, which literally means, which is acronym for artificial life larger than biological life, which is a really wonderful metaphor. Maybe artificial life is larger than biological life, but any life, for that matter, would be larger than the biological life. And the whole phase space, if you like, of possible life forms is always larger than the biological systems that we understand them to be. And of course, it's larger than the current understanding of Homo sapiens. So we should not be blinded by our short-sightedness. So when we talk about transhumanism or posthumanism, we are always in the danger of thinking lightly of the whole possibilities of what could be achieved by life forms in general. So I have always that objection when people talk about transhumanism or posthumanism in a light manner. Of course, we have been trans something, post something. In the whole history of biological evolution, it has been a succession of posts and transes, and we are here because of that. So there's nothing special with what they are doing with the modern technology. We'll be coming back to that later. But, we really need to think in terms of a robust base of biological evolutionary history. And when we do that, we cannot really take the very concept of being human for granted. Well, I'm coming to a place where I need to take transportation, so I will stop here and continue later. So I am back to this recording I have been to Kodansha, which is a major publishing house in Japan, and I have been in dialogue with Takeshi Oro and Hiroki Azuma, really wonderful people, and we have been discussing many things, and I really had fun. Now I'm back on street, and I'm going to talk for the next 20-30 minutes, finishing my talk on what humans are, hopefully. So, it's really interesting to see that, people are ready to discard any ideas, any conventional ideas we might have about humans in favor of newly developing technologies, which is a wonder to me because, it's like discarding the Mother Earth in favor of Mars, for example. That is something that Mr. Elon Musk has been putting forward for some years, and although I am an admirer of Elon Musk, I really do not care for the way he kind of disdains our planet Earth, because after all, this is a place that we have been living. This is a place we are likely to be living for decades, millenniums, and so on, hopefully. And it is one thing to explore the possibilities of settling on Mars, but at least a part of us, some part of us, but it's quite another thing to say that maybe we don't need the Earth at all if we have Mars. I remember vividly a TED conference some years ago, and Elon Musk stated his idea that probably we need some contingency planning because we don't know what's going to happen to Mother Earth, and we might have total nuclear war, we might have drastic climate change, and we might have other things that might make living on this planet difficult or impossible. So we need to have a planet B. That was the gist of Elon Musk's talk, and probably Mars would be a great candidate for the prolongation of human species through these contingency plans. So that was his talk, and he was, I think, in conversation with Chris Anderson, the curator of TED, and that talk went, I think, rather well. I mean, the audience did not really suspect anything strange about Elon Musk's talk, partly because he was an enchanter. I mean, I think there was a Elon Musk magic, and people were taken in by his arguments, but also I don't think the people attending, including me, were critical enough of him, so there was no booing or anything. But then some sessions later, a female speaker came up on stage, and she said that it was wrong for Elon Musk to consider abandoning Earth in favor of another planet, be it Mars, for example, because there's no planet B. I think that's really true, and this attitude of some male, I'm a male too, but some attitudes of some male speakers to treat a very essential thing like the Mother Earth or our bodily existence as something dispensable is, I think, regrettable, for the lack of better words. So we might actually explore alternative ways to implement our intentions and emotion and even spirituality, but that doesn't mean that we should discard our existence in this organic embodiment altogether. We are humans, and we would probably remain to be humans for centuries to come. And so it's too early, I think, to talk about posthumanism or transhumanism, because we can't really go beyond organic existence, So it'll be wrong to say that we can discard this organic body one way or another easily. I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, so there's an analogy, I think, between talks about posthumanism or transhumanism and the talks about migrating to other planets, because it's not going to happen. As far as I'm concerned, I mean, it's an illusion, I think, to think that we can do that in a few decades, or in the famous Elon time, in the accelerated time frame the serial entrepreneur is famously capable of. So anyway, I'm coming to traffic signal, so I need to stop because I'm an embodied being. So anyway, where was I? Yeah. So, in general, I think, people always try to go beyond something, be it capitalism or Mother Earth or humans. And, it's fashionable to do that. I mean, it's fashionable to talk about something that would be beyond capitalism, something that would be beyond money, something that would be beyond humans, and something that would be beyond the mothers. But that's not going to happen most of the time. Actually, I can probably say that that's never going to happen, because the world is not made that way. We remain what we are now, even if we invented something quite new. And probably it's now great to talk about this thing in specific manners. So when we invent machines, artificial intelligence systems, and so on, we may use them to augment our intelligence and memory and so on. But that doesn't mean that we would be going beyond humanity. For example, what's happening with the board game of shogi. I discussed it in my earlier episodes of Street Brain Radio. What's happening is that professional shogi players are augmenting their memory capacity with artificial intelligence, and they are actually enhancing their cognitive abilities so that they would be better shogi players. So they actually are not going beyond humans. They are actually remaining to be human, but they are getting to be stronger, better humans, better human embodiment of shogi players. So, actually, what's happening is not going beyond humanity. And this illusion about brain-machine interface or brain-computer interface is very strong. And, people who invest heavily on these things might tout the possibility of achieving miracles in the world to come. However, at the end of the day, they are just technological possibilities at best, and I don't think that technologies such as Neuralink would change the way we exist in any foreseeable future. Mr. Elon Musk is really great, and he's always tossing around interesting ideas. But about the white paper on Neuralink, I don't think things have been thought through. It is certainly an impressive white paper, and the way Mr. Elon Musk is proposing to use microelectrodes in a really sophisticated ways to record neural activities and also stimulate neural activities. It is impressive, but it is not something that would realize what enthusiasts claiming they can achieve. For example, you can really, download dictionary for languages that you don't know. If you don't understand Chinese, the idea is that if you can augment your brain activities with Chinese dictionaries, implemented in terms of neural link, maybe you can speak Chinese instantly. These ideas have been around, but I don't think that's going to happen. And probably it'll be more practical to use modern large language models to do that. I mean, you can always use DeepL, ChatGPT, and all these things to converse in Chinese or any language that you don't know, rather than exposing yourself to the risk of infected or otherwise maliciously affected by application of Neuralink or other similar technologies. So I don't think that's going to change ourselves in any drastic manner overnight. So the same is true for any brain imaging, brain measurement based interface technologies that are proposed. And when it comes to reading out the data that are supposed to be in the cortical circuit, the more you know about the brain, the more pessimistic you become about reading out the so-called information in your brain, because at the present level of scientific knowledge, it is not known where in the hierarchy of structures of neural networks would the information be found, and it is quite difficult. I mean, connectionist modelists would claim that the synaptic connection patterns would be the thing to look for, but that is arguable, debatable, and nobody has established beyond doubt that if you have a certain synaptic patterns, then you have a certain state of mind. In the best case, you can, for example, read out what the subject is going through in terms of vision by measuring activities in the primary visual cortex, V1. But that is possible because there is this conservation of spatial organization in terms of retinotopic activities, and retinotopic meaning it basically conserves the topology of the retina with a slight transformation mapping, so that it is easy to work out what the subject is seeing by measuring activities of the neurons in the V1. And although this has been celebrated for good reasons, the other breakthrough in neuroscience, it is a far cry from being able to monitor, for example, your linguistic abilities. So as I talk, I'm generating some languages through my motor cortex, and it'll be really difficult to measure my brain activities and reproduce exactly what I'm talking right now. And even if you can do that, it is arguable if measuring my brain activities and reproducing it externally through technological ways is preferable to my speaking using my body in the conventional way. So it's not really apparent that the so-called brain-machine interface or brain-computer interface technologies would be really great in enhancing or augmenting our abilities. So probably in the foreseeable future, probably it'll be the other way around. I mean, rather than depending on the interface between the brain and external computing devices through invasive measuring techniques, we will probably be using non-invasive conventional ways of communication so that we can train our brain to do better jobs at many cognitive tasks. And that is actually what some researchers are proposing to do, because energetically speaking, the human brain is arguably much more efficient than its digital counterparts, because, for example, a professional shogi player can go on a professional match with the help of a lunch meal, but whereas if you want to train an artificial intelligence system, it would consume a lot of electricity, not to mention a vast memory storage. So the human brain is actually much more efficient than digital computers. So I think, I stopped recording for a moment and I resumed now. And I think, the problem with transhumanism or posthumanism is, one, we don't know what humanity is being human actually means, what it actually entails, and what possibilities for development or expansion it has. And two, when people talk about the technological possibilities for, either transforming or augmenting the human condition, it doesn't always make sense. I mean, despite the media coverage and brilliant ideas that are shared around it, I don't think we are really in a situation where we can say for certain whether we'll be able to do it. And the most serious discrepancy between what some are claiming that they can do and what could be actually done realistically is that the direction in which these research endeavors are going forward are completely different from the way the living forms have evolved on this earth. I mean, the living forms are here to live and to, produce offspring so that they would be proliferating on this earth. And so they are interdependent and they live in the ecological system and they occupy a niche in that. But the computational system that we know today, the digital computers, robots, and so on, they have developed in an artificial environment, and nobody has actually seen stray robot yet. I mean, they can only exist in artificially protected environments. And of course, we can talk about the virtual beings, virtual bots, virtual agents on the internet, but they can also exist only in terms of insulated environments and supplied by electricity and so on. So if you ask what happens when singularity happens, and after singularity, how should we cope with artificial intelligence systems, maybe the simplest answer would be to pull the plug. I mean, if you pull the plug, the whole thing would go down. Of course, you can make arguments that probably the artificial intelligence systems would be clever and they would prevent the pulling of the plug physically, or they might actually develop some sophisticated gaslighting techniques so that we will be illusioned into providing support for these creatures, virtual or real, but anyway artificial, and maybe that's what's actually happening. But it is not really, it doesn't make really a common sense to think that these artificially developed systems would be in any way equivalent to the organic things that we find ourselves, including ourselves. So I think the directions are completely different, and that means a lot. I mean, sometimes it's beneficial to compare artificial life and artificial intelligence research. And artificial life research does not necessarily presupposes intelligence. I mean, of course, intelligence is a wonderful hallmark of some life, including our own. But you cannot say that, a yeast is worthless because it doesn't have level of intelligence as measured by us. But the yeast cell is very intelligent in terms of surviving in the environment and proliferating and adapting to the changing environment and so on. A bacteria cell is much more intelligent than us in terms of surviving in outer space, in the vacuum, in low temperatures and so on. So, if you compare artificial life with actual life, then there's this advantage of the biological life in many, many ways. And if we compare human intelligence with artificial intelligence, in many ways we have advantages over artificial systems in ways we don't often probably appreciate fully. So as it stands, our ability to remember things, our ability to calculate, our ability to produce large chunks of natural languages might seem inferior to artificial intelligence systems. But in terms of surviving and adapting to various environmental changes and, communicating with each other and exhibiting group intelligence and, otherwise somehow live, I think human intelligence is much superior to artificial intelligence. And there's no doubting that. So I don't know how to put it, but probably there's an overconfidence of the artificial intelligence community associated with the possibility of replacing humans altogether. And that hubris, I think, is behind the present over-enthusiasm, overheated bubble in the belief of posthumanism or transhumanism. I don't think we are going to be replaced in anytime soon. And the more important and essential question is, do we want to be replaced? Do we want to be replaced by artificial systems? I think the answer for many of us would be no. We don't want to be replaced by artificial systems. Some people say that we can gain eternal digital life, by transferring ourselves to digital systems, by copying all our data to a computer. And as I have said, although it will be tiresome to argue in detail why I think it to be so, I think it is impossible to do that. I mean, it will be impossible to copy our entire self onto a digital computer. That's my belief. But anyway, apart from that, even if we could someday, which I don't think would pass to be, but anyway, assuming that we can copy ourselves onto a digital computer, do we want to do that? Do we really want to do that when we, pass away sometime? Do we want to exist in the digital computer as a digital conscious being? Well, it's again arguable whether we can be self-conscious as a digital entity. I doubt it. For some reasons I have already discussed in other episodes of this Street Brain Radio casting. But I don't think, even if that was possible technologically and in principle, I don't think we would be inclined to do that. I don't think it would be within our nature to desire to be an eternal digital being, because that's something that we probably wouldn't want as a robust living entity. Maybe we would like to do that as an entity of ideology, but in many cases, repeatedly in the history of human being, I think we found that ideologies are always a betrayer of life, and ideologies do not tangle with being alive. So I think we would probably prefer to live as an organic entity rather than as a digital entity, even if we are, we are bound to be remain mortal. So anyway, I think the time has come to summarize this Street Brain Radio episode. So, of course, it's sad to think that we are mortal beings, and sometimes we dream of being immortal. However, these ideas about transhumanism and posthumanism as means to enhance our temporal life beyond what is expected biologically would be bound to fail because of matters in principle, but also because of reasons in practice. And when I say reasons in practice, in that simple phrase embedded the whole history of biological forms on which we are dependent, as we are dependent on the great Mother Earth. So we shouldn't really discard these historic and embodied reasons and the basis of our existence easily, because to do that would be the fullest and most foolish and most irrelevant act in the history of human beings. And I don't think many of us are fool enough to do that. So with that thought, I close this episode of Street Brain Radio. Thank you for listening, and please come back to this place sometime soon.